Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shaukatali.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live, although it's raining out there, and please do take care if you're going out after the program. And but this evening we've got a very special guest who will talk to us about the various issues that are going on in our country. But I thought I'd start the proceedings off with one of our neighboring leaders, the one and only and the incomparable Imran Khan, who had something to say about sham democracy and about the people who could or could not run a country. So here we go. This is Imran Khan.
By Musharraf for 2.5 years, I supported him. I really thought, someone who could fake sincerity like he does. He's brilliant at that. And I fell for it. And for 2.5 years, we thought, the man was really had got rid of sham democracy and was going to bring genuine democracy, quote unquote. This is what he said. And in the end, I discovered that it's not the fault of generals. It's the institution which they come out of. They just don't have the vision to run a country. They are not equipped to deal with normal human beings. They don't understand debate and consensus and stuff. And so as Churchill once said, war is too serious a business for generals. I really believe that they're not equipped to make these decisions. They should be given, projects, okay, go capture that hill. But when you tell them to run the country, it doesn't work.
That was Mr. Imran Khan, Prime Minister, of course, of Pakistan. My guest tonight is Mr. Harshana Nanayakkara. Very good evening to you, Mr. Nanayakkara, and thank you very much for being on the program.
Good evening, Faraz. Thank you.
Now then, Imran Khan spoke about how one of his leaders faked sincerity, and he was quite good at that. My question to you is, it appears to me that most of our leaders have faked sincerity time and time and time again. Am I right, or am I just living in some sort of, I don't know, in some dream world?
I'd say you're spot on. I say you're spot on, because we don't have to go that far. The current government or the government before, or actually, if you go back to 1948, except for a few leaders, all we had was fake patriots who thump on their chest with patriotic versions, but do something completely different. And I'm quite in agreement with what Imran Khan says about that generals can run. Indeed, because obviously Pakistan has been absolutely ruined over the years by this sort of misadventure of the various generals. One general even had Zulfikar Ali Bhutto executed in spite of worldwide pleas and condemnation. They completely ignored them, and Pakistan has had a very, very rough period indeed. But the reports are now that Pakistan is actually getting better and much better. Is that about right? Oh, you're absolutely correct, because see, even when Gotabaya Rajapaksa was running for the presidency, we said this, that is, now, as quite correctly Imran Khan points out, when you say go capture that hill, they are very good for projects. If you look at Gotabaya Rajapaksa, when he was defense secretary, he had projects. Beautify Colombo. We'll do it, because those are things that can be done with orders, creating a jogging path, keeping a place clean. But being a leader of a country requires consensus and discussions to convince people. You can't order the people to do things, but you have to convince the public that this is the right thing to do.
Consensus and discussion, those are wonderful words. And I wonder whether there was any discussion apart from consensus when it came to the supply, when it came to the decision to move Sri Lanka towards a green economy, and they pronto banned the importation of chemical fertilizer, just like that. Do you think that there was consensus? Do you think there was a discussion? Or was this some form of arbitrary decision taken on the advice of misguided people?
It was an arbitrary decision, because if you really look at it, now first and foremost, even your viewers must understand that we are not against organic farming. I think that is a fabulous way of going about with it. But even if you look at Gotabe's policy document, this Vistas of Splendor, Prosperity, he says within 10 years to convert ourselves into organic. Because the reality is that this soil has been used to chemical fertilizer for the last 50 years. If you try to do overnight, none of these seeds are going to respond to organic fertilizer, because these are hybrid seeds we are using. But the sudden stoppage has created a serious problem, because this is against the advice of many scientists and agriculture experts, because you cannot, firstly, to produce that amount of compost in such a short time, and our seeds, being hybrid seeds mainly used for cultivation and farming, will not react to these things. So therefore, I don't think he ever listened to anyone. But in fact, now although they are saying that we did organic to save and protect the people's health, the first excuse he gave was that there's about $400 million US being cost to bring import fertilizer, that they want to cut it down to save the dollars. Actually, it's not 400 million, about 259 odd million. So the reason for the stoppage of importing of fertilizer is nothing to do with the organic cultivation being great or want to promote it, but the lack of dollars. That's what he said right at the beginning. But the reality is now farmers are on the roads because the Maha season has begun. Our biggest income tea industry is under threat. So obviously, arbitrary decision. Now the biggest problem is when a leader, proper leader, takes a decision and he knows it's wrong, he will accept it and reverse it. So the damage will be less. But what we have is, as Imran Khan said, someone who knows how to not know how to do a, like, you know, discuss and negotiate.
Capture some hill.
Go capture a hill. So that's the problem.
Well, they certainly did that out in the north, and they managed to get rid of that little problem. Not little, over 30 years. But now then, when we talk about all these issues, when does the man on the street, man in the village, man wherever, when are they going to feel the effects of not having sufficient fertilizer?
The farmers are already feeling it. That's why they are on the streets. The government is trying to put up a picture saying that political parties are instigating people to come for these protests. Believe me, no political party can instigate anyone to come onto the street unless there's a genuine grievance. The Maha season has begun for Batiklav and Ampara and that area. And they need fertilizer, and they need it now, whatever it is, organic or otherwise. Now, if this season fails, by around next March, April, we may have food shortages because the tea crop is failing. So internationally, we are going to be in trouble with that, because I mean that's our one of our main income earners.
Yes, although now they've allowed the tea industry to bring some form of so-called acceptable substitute.
Chemical fertilizer.
Yeah,
that's the word.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
The government is very careful with the words.
Right.
But it's chemical fertilizer, because you can't run on organic. Not
so they've gone back.
Obviously, they have gone back.
Yeah.
Obviously.
But we had an agriculture, I think it was agriculture secretary, who said that the Gazette notification was wrong and that it wasn't specific enough. And Harshana Silva is of the view that actually the importation of chemical fertilizer is not banned according to the documents that he's seen.
Whenever people wake up in the morning, there's a general sense of insecurity and they feel unsettled because they do not know what happens next. This is exactly the reason is we do not know what the government says and does. That's why people are unsettled when they wake up in the morning. They do not know what's going on.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. Tonight, unfortunately, only by SMS. The WhatsApp isn't working for the next 6 hours. So just please, SMS 0772 300 305. Our wonderful producers put up a card on the screen soon. Now then, isn't it political suicide, apart from the fact that it's going to cause grave hardship to the Republic if there's a food shortage? Isn't it political?
It is political suicide. My biggest problem, it can be one of the two things. Gotabaya Rajapaksa simply doesn't get it, or he gets it, but he doesn't care. What other conclusion can we come to?
I find it impossible to comprehend that any Sri Lankan can sort of look askance and say, look, I don't care. I don't think that perhaps, do you think that the possibility is different, that the advisors may be acting with vested interests and collateral purposes, and therefore they are misleading the president, or they are keeping back some information, and after all the president cannot possibly know everything?
112 academics and scientists wrote a letter. 112 of them signed it. These are agriculture experts and scientists and people. They did say that this was the wrong decision. We are going to have a food shortage in time to come if you follow this line.
Yeah.
That is not to say that organic farming is bad, but it won't produce the results. So I do not want to think. Now, we know that he's a weak leader. I mean, he himself accepted when he said, I do not know much about politics. Mahinda
Yes,
must
but
intervene more.
he's admitted that he's not apolitical. And
he's weak.
Well, I don't think he said that, though.
He didn't say that, but when he said, I do not know politics, that's why I want Mahinda to intervene more, his brother to intervene more. And then he brings Basil with massive fanfare. So obviously, if he's a capable person of handling affairs, he doesn't have to rely on everybody else.
But you could have a solid team and then do the same thing.
His entire family is in the government, so if
I don't necessarily mean that they are a solid team.
Does he have a solid team? The solid team, for whatever it's worth, we may not agree politically, was Vietmaga people. No? They are the ones who were intelligent.
Yeah.
Right? But where are they today? Are they supporting Gotabaya?
Thank you for your question. Somebody is telling me that it's unfair to compare Imran Khan with any of our leaders because Mr. Imran Khan has got an education. That may be a little bit coming to near the sort of end of the belt, but a point taken, really, because there are people, I'm sure there are in Pakistan too, who lack sort of basic qualifications.
You see, for us, none of these MPs in the parliament in Sri Lanka, or the president himself, broke and entered the parliament. Our public voted, knowing who they are, right? So now we are complaining that they are not educated.
The various things have happened that sort of questions the sanity and the purpose and the sincerity of this government. And today was one of them. And thank you for a viewer who sent this message. The government appointed a special task force to implement the one law, one country business. Do we need this in this hour? I mean, you know the composition.
I would love to answer that one.
Yes, please answer it.
Look here. This again proves Imran Khan is correct, right? Country is run by a parliament and not by task force. From day one, all Gotabaya did was appoint in task force. So he can order them. And you can't order a parliament. So he doesn't know how to operate in a parliamentary democracy. Now this particular appointment of Nyanasara as the head of one country, one law is really making a mockery of the judiciary and our democratic values, because Nyanasara himself was serving a prison term for insulting the court, for contempt of court.
But he got a presidential pardon.
Exactly. So is this government this bankrupt to appoint a man who was convicted in a court of law for violating and insulting the court? So can you sincerely believe such a person can actually be in a committee of that nature? If you look at that committee, not a single woman and not a single Tamil person in that Gazette notification I saw. Again, I'm telling you, this is a sham by this government to divert the attention of the public from the real reason. That is the arrival of that Chinese fertilizer which has failed many quarantine tests.
Now, talking about that fertilizer, let's take the one before that. We had the Malaysian Ambassador to Sri Lanka who was trying to give his advisory on how the Sri Lankan government ought to be dealing with the palm cultivation. In spite and despite the fact that under the hand, in effect under the hand of the President, there is a Gazette notification in which the President and the Gazette envisages an end to the palm cultivation over 10 years. 10% every year to be uprooted and so on. But I have it that some of these people involved in the palm cultivation, they are mainly companies that are virtually no smallholders in that industry. But don't you think that this is a interference in the affairs of Sri Lanka by some other state? They shouldn't be. We've got our rules. Whether they're good or bad is a different thing, but we've got our rules. And that, to me, a country that wants to stand up and say, oh no, we're not going to do that inquiry or this inquiry or that accountability, 40,000 is wrong, blah, blah, blah. When we stand up on our feet and start screaming about that, then it appears to me that when we have an ambassador of another country telling our president, our government, our legislators what to do, that is without doubt an infringement of our sovereignty. And of course we have the issue with the Chinese, which is even worse, because they are now saying, they as in the Chinese ambassador is now saying, oh look, you know what, we want that that faulty product to be retested. Really? Why? We had it tested before. Isn't that an impingement of sovereignty?
Well, about the Malaysian one, again, this is a sovereign nation. What a country does is up to its government and its people.
Yeah.
Ambassadors are simply guests who are enjoying our courtesies.
Yeah.
They cannot intervene in internal affairs, and they give new opinions about the palm oil industry. We have figured out how our water tables get affected, and we are on a plan. So, ambassadors also must be careful whenever they speak. But for me, it's more than the Malaysian ambassador, is the Chinese situation. The Chinese situation is far worse. That is far worse because they are threatening our government that international relations will be threatened if we do not accept this consignment. And believe me, this has been tested twice. When the ship came, they have tested twice. As you know, composed fertilizer. In fact, our...
Harshana, can I stop you there?
Yeah.
Because there's an irritant here, which is the break. Let's go for this break, have a look to see what's happening in the break, and we'll see you on the other side, and we'll be talking to Harshana Nanayakkara about the Chinese fertilizer.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
Welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with Mr. Harshana Nanayakkara. We're talking about the Chinese fertilizer imports to Sri Lanka, or not even. How can the Chinese tell us what to do about the testing? Surely that's the buyer's prerogative.
Obviously, but I have to explain the background also. Now, many political decisions may have an impact on the country for a while, but we have a plant quarantine act in this country. The reason is we don't want invasive and destructive plant species, microorganisms coming into this country. This decision to bring the Chinese fertilizer is something going to be irreversible if it is used on our lands, because it has been rejected twice.
Right.
If you look at it, the letter of credit which has been opened was prior to the samples were tested and rejected.
Prior to the samples were tested?
Prior to the samples were tested.
If they did this in our company, the chairman would boot that person out.
Exactly. Now, then they send a letter to the Director General, I believe somewhere on the 27th of October, saying that they shipped the fertilizer on the 23rd of September. But by the 6th of October, our reports have come out saying that they are not suitable. They have 2 types of bacteria. I mean, true, compost composition is microorganisms.
Yeah.
But if they are dangerous to the soil, because if you release them into the soil, we'll have a serious problem. My question is, who opened up LCs, decided to open LCs, country's money, to these people?
Prior to
all the testing.
Right.
And when it was first rejected, our agriculture minister took the side of the company and said that these samples may have been tampered with. So they tested the second time.
Not many,
detailed report.
I don't know about others, but I certainly don't place much faith in our Minister of Agriculture.
Well, neither does I, but what I'm saying is...
I have to say
yeah,
that.
but so when it has been rejected twice, and that ship apparently, from what I gather from Sirius and other news channels, is that it never left. It has been hanging around and coming back to the port. Now they are saying, they are threatening, the Chinese company is threatening us, saying, you appoint a third party. So why should we? We are a sovereign nation. And the worst part is this. The Chinese ambassador summons Sashindra Rajapaksa and Disalutgamage. Do you know the protocol is, if an ambassador wants to speak to one of our ministers, they must pay a visit to our minister at his discretion. He cannot summon us to his, that's not the protocol. I mean, I'm using a politically incorrect term, the word servant, right? It's like servant call in the masthead.
Perhaps Professor Pires was a bit busy. Is that a mitigating circumstance?
All I'm trying to say is that the Chinese has the audacity to summon our ministers.
So departure from due process there.
Departure from all the protocol. So basically we have taken loan after loan from them.
Yeah.
Now they're twisting our arm to accept dangerous cargo and release it onto our soil. And believe me, we do not know who the third party is. I'm telling you today, Faraz, it will be approved and be sent.
I think a 15-year-old will probably come to the same conclusion.
Yep. So that's where the problem is.
Now then, let's get on to more things, because you know, this is I know it's serious, but the sincerity or the lack of sincerity on the part of officialdom in terms of this fertilizer business is absolutely appalling, is what I am getting through my SMSs here. Let's look at another bone of contention, and that is with the several withdrawal of indictments from the Attorney General's Department. What on earth is going on? Surely when you serve somebody, you decide to charge someone, the Attorney General's Department have gone through the file and decided that this is a bona fide case, you know, prima facie evidence and all that business, and so they decide. Then what fatness is it for them to turn up in court and say, oh, no, awfully sorry, we're withdrawing the indictments? What does that mean? Does that mean the Attorney General has messed up? Well, should he be sacked? Well, should he be held responsible?
Well, rule of law and democracy has been under threat from the time Gotabaya Rajapaksa came into power. The 20th Amendment gave him so much of powers. Now, I have been working at the Attorney General's Department as a prosecutor for a while, so let me explain the process.
Yeah.
No single person decides to file a charge. There's at least 2 or 3 people, including the supervisor, sees whether there's a prima facie case, whether there's a case to be charged.
Yeah.
And once you charge, you have to proceed with the trial. You may get convicted or acquitted. But Attorney General withdraws them without giving a reason. Withdraws them without giving a reason. So what's the message the Attorney General is sending? That we have done something wrong by charging him. If that is the case, they must start an inquiry, right, against the State Council who drafted the thing, the supervisor who approved, and the Attorney General himself at the time, and say they were wrong to charge this person. They were wrong. Investigation. But the thing is, most of these indictments which are being withdrawn by the Attorney General without giving reasons are indictments that was drafted and forwarded at a time the current Chief Justice was the Attorney General. So are you telling me the current Chief Justice does not know the law? That's serious. So I think with what the Attorney General is doing, withdrawing without giving reasons, people are doubting his sincerity, people are doubting his independence, and actually our system of justice is under threat due to the conduct of the Attorney General, who withdraws indictments without giving a reason. Give a reason. What is the reason why you are withdrawing it? If there's no evidence, say so. Then the question arises, then why did you charge them on the first place? Who took the decision? Is there political victimization? So right now, Attorney General is basically making a mess of our institutions by not giving reasons for withdrawals. It's a different matter if they hear the case and they get acquitted. It happens all the time. That's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's fine.
I hope that you're not going to have a hard time in court. You are a practicing attorney, aren't you? Somebody's asking, didn't the AG do these things during the hour parliament time?
They did.
They did.
They did. The problem, this is where the problem lies. Attorney General, the judiciary, they must be independent state machinery. So it is nothing new that whatever the government that's into power, the executive, they like to interfere and tinker. This is why as public we should rally around the Attorney General, we should rally around our judiciary to keep them independent, because that is the only checks and balance safety we have. Right now, even among the legal fraternity, we are confused and shocked as to why these indictments are being withdrawn and what is the reason for it. Not only that, what about those charges of bribery commission? How many bribery cases were withdrawn? On a technicality that all the 3 commissioners have not signed the...
So why did it ever come to court then if it only carried the signature of 1 commissioner?
On top of that, it's a technical defect, so they can reinstitute action.
Right.
They can reinstitute.
But they haven't.
They haven't.
But the same thing happened, I very clearly remember, in the Parliament government.
That's why they lost.
That's why they lost. There you go. That's why they lost. Maybe these lot will lose too. And then we all... But then the circle is never ending. The people will be put out and put out and put out. You know, your party, the lead partner, the MPP, the JVP, what prospects for a better show of force in Parliament at a potential next election?
Right now, at the ground level, our popularity is surging. That is because people are in pain. People have been betrayed badly. As I've told in one show before, the 6.9 million people who voted for Gotabaya Rajapaksa voted with great faith, with a good dream. But that dream has been betrayed. So now the people are shifting away from those who betrayed the dream and looking for alternatives. I'll tell you one thing. We talk about capitalism, socialism and various economic theories, various forms of government. But whatever the system you put into place, it's run by men and women. And if their character is questionable, if their integrity is questionable, if they are not honest, any system will fail. So therefore, right now in the horizon, I'm not saying there are individuals who are honest in the SJB, there are individuals who are honest in the Pohot tour, individually. But collectively as a unit who's capable and honest are the NPP. And we do have a very good chance in the coming elections. And we are working towards it.
What do you think? The Republic of Sri Lanka will hear you, and will you get a few more seats than the 2 or 3 that you have right now?
This time the aim is to capture power, not to be the main opposition or be a police officer. We have the vision and the mission. We have the team. We will launch them on time.
You got the money?
No need. When the people are ready to vote, you don't need that much of money. Believe me.
Will you be going village to village, hamlet to hamlet, house to house?
Already started.
With the message?
Already started.
With the intensity, which means that you will win?
Definitely, because the country was suffering very badly, things were getting worse. But due to the lockdown, most of us were inside our houses. Only now the country is opening up. So we are really going to the ground level and telling people. And for the first time for us, we are being heard. Many people are saying what you guys are saying is correct. Not realizing we've been saying the same thing from 2015. So I think we have a decent chance. But above all, it's the people who have to decide. If you are tired of voting in corrupt people, then don't vote in them in. This is what I say.
And really, it's as simple as that.
Simple as that. You avoid waste and corruption. This country can be pulled out from this.
Do you know what? I've got 1 more minute, and I've got to quickly slip this in. Don't you think, or do you think, that the international community will be completely shell-shocked that a person who's been convicted for contempt of court and so on and so forth has now been appointed in an almost perverse appointment to head this task force to look into this one country, one law, one Sri Lanka? How bad is going to be the international impact?
The international impact is already bad in this human rights circles with what's happening inside prisons, police brutality on the rise, right? And now you are appointing a monk who's known for his racial and religious slurs, Islamophobia, and a man who has been convicted in a court of law for contempt of court. So obviously we are going to be in trouble internationally. Human rights aspect.
Harshana Nanayakkara, thank you very much for your time on Newsline Live.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate that. And that's the way it was on Newsline Live. Take care. Have a great evening ahead of you. And it's now time for the primetime news from News First. Take care, and as always, God bless you.